The assembly hall of the Galactic Military Academy stretched wide enough to hold 3,000 cadets, and on this particular morning, every seat was filled. The ceiling arched high overhead, made of transparent steel that showed the stars beyond. Young warriors from 47 different species sat in organized rows, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes that would have amazed anyone from Earth. Commander Zelthar stood at the center podium, his reptilian scales gleaming under the artificial lights. He was nearly 3 meters tall, with eyes that could see in wavelengths humans had never witnessed. His tail swished behind him as he waited for silence. When he spoke, his voice carried through the hall without need for amplification. Attention, cadets. I have an important announcement regarding this year's War Games. The War Games. Every cadet in the room knew what those words meant. It was the final test, the ultimate challenge that would determine their rankings across the entire galaxy. Winners became legends. Losers became footnotes. For 200 years, the War Games had sorted the strong from the weak. Effective immediately, Zelthar continued. Human cadets are banned from participating in the War Games. Any human currently enrolled will compete in alternative assessments. For 3 full seconds, the hall remained silent. Then someone laughed. The sound was sharp and brief, like a bark. Within moments, thousands of cadets joined in. The laughter rolled through the assembly hall like thunder. Zix, a Krellian warrior with 4 powerful arms and skin like armored plates, slapped his knee with one hand while pointing at the podium with another. Banned? The humans? He turned to his squad mates. Why would anyone bother banning them? They are soft. Pink skin that tears like wet paper. They cannot even see in the dark. Beside him, Tamora adjusted her position on the hovering seat designed for her species. The Vexani were telepathic beings, slender and graceful, with large eyes that seemed to look through rather than at you. She touched her long fingers together in what might have been her version of a smile. I scanned a human once during training exercises, Tamora said, her voice musical and light. Their emotional control is terrible. They feel fear, anger, sadness, all flooding through their minds at once. How can such creatures make logical military decisions? Around them, other species added their own commentary. The Thoraxians, with their massive wings and beaked faces, cawed their agreement. The Droon, who communicated through color changes in their skin, flashed patterns that translated to mockery. Even the usually quiet Melnkar, whose species valued honor above all else, allowed themselves small gestures of dismissal. My cousin trained with a human last year, said Korth, a young Droon whose skin currently showed shades of amused purple. The human could not even lift the standard equipment pack. They needed special lightweight gear like children. More laughter followed this comment. Commander Zelthar made no attempt to stop it. He simply stood at the podium watching, his expression unreadable. Behind him, 3 other senior officers stood in a line. Unlike the laughing cadets, these officers were not smiling. One of them, a scarred Thoraxian general, kept one wing arm crossed over his chest while the other gripped his ceremonial weapon. In the back row of the assembly hall, a small group of human cadets sat together. There were only 8 of them in a room of thousands. They did not laugh. They did not speak. They simply sat with straight backs and level eyes, staring forward at nothing in particular. One of the humans, a young woman with dark hair tied back in a practical knot, had her jaw clenched so tight that muscles stood out along her neck. Her name was Rodriguez, and she had scored in the top 15% of her class in tactical analysis. The ban meant she would never get to prove what she could do when it actually mattered. The cadet next to her, a tall man named Jackson with shoulders broader than most humans, put a hand on her arm. Easy, he whispered. Don't give them the satisfaction. Rodriguez took a slow breath and nodded once. Commander Zelthar raised one clawed hand and the laughter slowly died down. I understand you find this amusing, he said. Many of you question why such a regulation is even necessary. You wonder why we would ban a species that seems so limited. Limited is being kind, someone shouted from the middle section. More laughter followed. Zelthar's eyes narrowed slightly. Indeed. However, the decision has been made by the Galactic Military Council and it will be enforced. Human cadets will be reassigned to support roles and theoretical coursework. That is all. The commander turned to leave, but before he could take 2 steps, a voice cut through the hall. It was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. Wait. Every head turned. From the line of senior officers behind the podium, one figure stepped forward. General Vrax was a veteran of 30 campaigns across 12 star systems. His species, the Krell-like Zix, were known for their combat prowess. But Vrax was different from the young cadets. He was old. His armored plates showed cracks and scars from battles most of these students could not imagine. 3 parallel scars ran across his face, deep enough that the armor had never properly healed. Vrax's 4 eyes scanned the assembly hall slowly. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but somehow it carried to every corner of the massive room. You want to know why humans are banned? It was not a question. The laughter had stopped completely now. Something in Vrax's tone made even the most arrogant cadets pay attention. You think they are weak? Vrax continued. He moved to the center of the podium, each step deliberate. You think they are slow, fragile, emotional? You think they cannot compete with species that have evolved for war? Zix shifted in his seat, suddenly uncomfortable. The general's eyes seemed to look directly at him. You are correct, Vrax said. In terms of pure physical capability, humans rank near the bottom of galactic species. A Krellian is 4 times stronger. A Vexani can read thoughts. A Thoraxian can fly. Humans can do none of these things. Some of the cadets relaxed slightly. This was what they expected to hear. But, Vrax said, and that single word seemed to drop the temperature in the room by 10 degrees. 15 years ago, before the ban, humans were allowed to participate in the war games. 1 team. 8 humans against 12 teams of our best cadets. The general paused, letting that information settle. I was the supervising officer for those games, Vrax continued. I have fought in 30 campaigns. I have seen warriors from every species do brave and terrible things. But what I witnessed those 8 humans do in 72 hours changed how I understand warfare itself. Tamora leaned forward in her seat. Around the hall, thousands of cadets did the same. This was not what they had expected. The humans lost, of course, Vrax said. They had to lose. There was no other possible outcome. Relief flickered across many faces. See? Humans were weak, just as they thought. Except, Vrax said, the official record says they lost. The truth is more complicated. Much more complicated. Commander Zelthar stepped forward. General, I am not sure this is... They need to know. Vrax cut him off. The old general's 4 eyes blazed with something that might have been anger or might have been respect. It was hard to tell. These cadets mock what they do not understand. They laugh at the ban without knowing what made it necessary. He turned back to address the assembly. Tomorrow morning at dawn, I will hold a special briefing in Theater 7. Attendance is mandatory for all final year cadets. I'm going to show you the recording of those war games. Every minute, every decision, every death. The word death seemed to echo in the sudden silence. After you watch what those 8 humans did, Vrax said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, you will understand why they are banned. You will understand why 17 species filed formal complaints. You will understand why the Galactic Military Council decided that allowing humans to participate in the war games was too dangerous. Dangerous? Zix could not help himself. The word burst out before he could stop it. How can they be dangerous if they are so weak? General Vrax turned his scarred face toward the young Krellian. All 4 of his eyes locked onto Zix, and for a moment, the cadet felt like prey being observed by a predator. That, Vrax said softly, is exactly what every team thought 15 years ago. 12 teams of the best warriors our galaxy could produce. All of them stronger, faster, and better equipped than the humans. All of them certain of their superiority. The general's hand moved to touch the 3 parallel scars on his face. I got these scars during those games, he said. Not from fighting. From trying to stop what was happening. From trying to enforce rules that the humans had found ways around without technically breaking them. I failed. He let his hand drop. Tomorrow you will see the recording. You will watch 8 humans face 96 elite warriors from 12 different species. You will see them outmatched in every measurable category. And then you will see what humans do when they are outmatched. Vrax began to walk away from the podium, then stopped. Without turning around, he added one final comment. The human who led that team was a sergeant named Sarah Chen. She had no special abilities, no advanced technology, no genetic enhancements, just a human brain and a human will. After watching the recording, ask yourselves this question. If one sergeant could do what she did with academy equipment and 7 other humans, what could she do with an army? The general left the podium. The other officers followed. Commander Zelthar dismissed the assembly, but for a long moment no one moved. In the back row, Rodriguez turned to Jackson. Her jaw was no longer clenched. Instead, she was smiling. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had just been given a small piece of hope. "Sergeant Sarah Chen," Rodriguez whispered. "I wonder what happened to her." Jackson's response was quiet. "Whatever it was, I bet it scared the hell out of them." Around the assembly hall, the mood had shifted. The laughter was gone. Cadets from different species looked at each other with new questions in their eyes. The human cadets remained in their seats after everyone else had begun to leave, sitting together in silence. Zix remained in his seat as well, his 4 hands gripping the armrests. He thought about General Vrax's scars. He thought about the word dangerous applied to humans. Most of all, he thought about the look in Vrax's eyes when he mentioned Sergeant Sarah Chen. That was not the look of someone remembering a failure. It was the look of someone remembering a force of nature. Tamora floated past on her hover seat, but she paused next to Zix. "You are troubled," she observed. Being telepathic, it was not a difficult assessment. "The General has seen everything," Zix said slowly. 30 campaigns. Battles we only read about in history files. What could 8 humans possibly do to affect someone like him? Tamora was silent for a moment. Then she said something that would keep Zix awake all night. Perhaps the question is not what they did. Perhaps the question is what they made him realize. She drifted away, leaving Zix alone with his thoughts in the emptying assembly hall. Somewhere in the military archives, a recording waited. A recording that had been classified for 15 years. A recording that apparently explained why the galaxy feared humanity. Tomorrow, they would all watch it together. Tomorrow, everything would change. Theater 7 was built into the side of a mountain, deep enough underground that no signals could enter or leave without permission. The room could hold 500 cadets comfortably, but this morning, over 700 packed inside. Final year students from every species crowded the seats, stood along the walls, and filled the aisles. Everyone wanted to see what had made General Vrax sound like he was issuing a warning instead of teaching a lesson. The lights were already dim when Zix found a spot in the middle section. Tamora hovered nearby, her large eyes reflecting the empty screen at the front of the theater. Korth, the Droon, whose skin usually flashed with confident colors, was showing more subdued greens and blues today. Around them, the usual pre-class chatter was quieter than normal. At exactly dawn, the doors sealed shut with a heavy metallic sound. General Vrax walked to the front of the theater, his forearms hanging loosely at his sides. The 3 parallel scars on his face seemed deeper in the dim light. "What you are about to see is classified military footage," Vrax began without preamble. "For 15 years, only the Galactic Military Council and senior command staff have had access to this recording. Today that changes. You will watch all 72 hours, compressed into 4 hours of key footage. You will not speak during the presentation. You will not leave. And you will not share what you see outside this room until the ban review is complete." He paused, his 4 eyes scanning the crowd. "Some of you will be disturbed by what you witness. Some of you will not believe it is real. I assure you every frame you see is authentic and unedited. This is what happened 15 years ago when we allowed humans into the war games." Vrax gestured and the screen came to life. The first image showed a standard pre-game briefing room. 12 teams stood in organized groups, each wearing their species' standard combat gear. The teams were easy to identify. The heavily armored Krellians, the winged Thoraxians, the color-shifting Droon, the telepathic Vexani. In the back corner, almost easy to miss, stood 8 humans. They looked painfully ordinary. Average height, average build, standard issue gear that seemed almost primitive compared to what other teams carried. The camera zoomed in on their faces for identification. Each human looked young, probably first-time war games participants. Their expressions were calm, almost bored. One human, a woman with her dark hair pulled back in a tight braid, stood slightly ahead of the others. Text appeared on the screen. "Sergeant Sarah Chen, team leader." Zix leaned forward in his seat. This was the human Vrax had mentioned yesterday. She looked completely unremarkable. No visible scars, no enhanced features, no signs of the warrior that Vrax's tone had suggested. She was just standing there with her team, waiting for the briefing to start. The mission parameters were standard. Vrax's voice narrated over the footage. 12 teams, 8 members each. 96 elite cadets total. They would be dropped onto Moon Designation 7-4. a hostile environment with varied terrain. Objective: survive 72 hours, eliminate opposing teams, and capture the central fortress. Standard weapons, standard equipment, standard rules of engagement. The screen showed the briefing officer, a tall Melnkar with ceremonial markings explaining the rules. Most cadets in Theater 7 had heard these rules 100 times. No killing, but incapacitation was allowed. No outside assistance. No unauthorized equipment. Victory went to the last team standing or whoever held the fortress when time expired. Each team was allowed to review the terrain maps for 1 hour before deployment. Vrax continued. Watch what the humans did during that hour. The footage switched to a split screen showing all 12 teams. Most teams were gathered around holographic displays of the moon's surface, their members pointing at various locations and clearly arguing about strategy. The Krellian team focused on direct approach routes. The Thoraxian team identified high ground for aerial advantage. The Vexani team seemed to meditate together, probably linking their telepathic network. The human team did something different. Sergeant Chen had spread a physical paper map on a table. Yes, actual paper, like something from a museum. Her 7 team members stood around it, and Chen was marking it with a primitive writing instrument. She pointed at different locations and each team member nodded. No holographics, no advanced displays, just paper, ink, and quiet conversation. In Theater 7, someone laughed. They are using paper? What is this, the Stone Age? Rax did not respond to the comment. On screen, the deployment began. 12 dropships descended through the moon's thin atmosphere. The footage showed each team's deployment from their ship's internal cameras. Most teams hit the ground running, immediately heading toward predetermined objectives. The Krellians moved in a tight formation toward the central fortress. The Thoraxians took to the air, scouting from above. The Droon split into pairs, using their camouflage abilities to disappear into the rocky terrain. The humans landed in a densely forested area on the moon's northern hemisphere. The footage showed them emerging from their dropship with careful, measured movements. They did not run. They did not immediately head toward any obvious objective. Instead, they formed a defensive perimeter and waited. Sergeant Chen pulled out her paper map again. She studied it for 30 seconds, looked at the surrounding terrain, then made a few more marks. She gestured to her team and they began moving through the forest at what seemed like an incredibly slow pace. Look at them, Korth whispered, his skin flashing confused yellows. They are moving like they are afraid. Like prey animals. Tamora said nothing, but her eyes were fixed on the screen. Hours passed in compressed time. The footage showed other teams engaging in combat. A Thoraxian team ambushed a group of Droon near a canyon. The fight was brief and brutal, with the Thoraxians' aerial advantage proving decisive. Elsewhere, 2 Krellian teams met head-on in what could only be described as a test of pure strength. The larger team won. Meanwhile, the humans continued their slow movement through the forest. They stopped frequently. Whenever they stopped, they studied their surroundings carefully. Sometimes Chen would make more marks on her paper map. Sometimes they would change direction slightly. What are they doing? Zix muttered. As if answering his question, Vrax spoke. For the first 18 hours, the human team avoided all contact. They engaged no one. They made no move toward any objectives. To observers, it looked like cowardice, like they were hiding and hoping to simply survive until time ran out. On screen, day turned to night on the moon. Most teams had established camps or were actively hunting other teams. The score display showed that 4 teams had already been eliminated. The humans still had all 8 members, but they had not scored a single point. This is boring, someone in Theater 7 complained. When does something actually happen? Vrax's tone became sharp. Watch. The footage switched to a Krellian team, different from Zix's relatives but clearly powerful warriors. They were moving through the same forested area where the humans had been hours earlier. 4 Krellians in the lead, 4 bringing up the rear, all of them alert and ready for combat. The team leader, a massive Krellian named Thorak, paused. His 4 eyes scanned the tree line. I smell something, he said to his team. The footage came from cameras mounted on their helmets so viewers could hear everything they said. What do you smell? One of his teammates asked. Humans, Thorak replied. The prey have been through here. The Krellian team laughed. They adjusted their formation and began following the trail the humans had left. It was not hard to follow. Broken branches, disturbed soil, Even what looked like a dropped piece of equipment marked the path clearly. "They are not even trying to hide their trail," Thoric said with clear contempt. "This will be easier than training exercises." In Theater 7, Zix felt a sudden cold sensation in his stomach. Something was wrong. He could feel it even if he could not name it. On screen, the Krellian team entered a clearing. The human trail led straight through it, obvious and easy to follow. Thoric gestured for his team to spread out and advance. They moved into the clearing with weapons ready, but without real caution. After all, what threat could 8 weak humans possibly pose? Sergeant Chen's voice came from speakers hidden in the trees around the clearing. Now. Everything happened in 3 seconds. The ground beneath 2 Krellians exploded upward, not with bombs that would violate the rules, but with sharpened stakes that had been buried under a thin layer of dirt and leaves. The stakes were made from the moon's native wood, which meant they were not unauthorized equipment. They were just trees that had been cut and sharpened by hand. Both Krellians went down, not dead but incapacitated by stakes through their legs and lower torsos. Their armor had been designed to stop energy weapons and bullets, not primitive wooden spears coming from directly beneath them. Simultaneously, nets fell from the trees above. Again, not technological nets. These were woven from local vines and weighted with rocks. They tangled 3 more Krellians, wrapping around their arms and weapons. The 3 remaining Krellians spun, trying to find targets. That was when the humans opened fire. They did not shoot from one direction. The 8 humans had positioned themselves in a complete circle around the clearing, each one hidden behind natural cover. They fired in coordinated bursts and every shot hit a specific target, the Krellians' helmet cameras. Within 10 seconds, all 8 Krellians were down. 5 were tangled in nets or impaled by stakes. 3 had been shot with stun rounds at close range after their helmet cameras were destroyed and they could not see properly. The footage went dark as the last Krellian camera was destroyed. When it came back, it was from a satellite view high above the moon. The image showed the human team emerging from their hiding spots. They moved efficiently, collecting weapons and equipment from the fallen Krellians. Sergeant Chen stood over Thoric, who was conscious but trapped under a net. Audio pickup from a working communicator caught her words. "You were right. We are prey, but you forgot something important. Sometimes prey evolves. Sometimes prey learns to hunt back." The humans disappeared back into the forest, leaving the Krellian team alive but completely out of the game. In Theater 7, there was absolute silence. The scoreboard updated on the screen. Human team, 8 members active. 40 points scored for eliminating another team. Current rank, 3rd place overall. "They set a trap," Tamora whispered. The entire 18 hours of wandering, leaving obvious trails, acting afraid. It was all to make someone think they were easy targets. Zix stared at the screen, his 4 hands gripping his seat. Thoric was a champion wrestler. His team was supposed to win the entire competition. How did 8 humans take them down in seconds? Vrax's voice answered from the front of the theater. Because the humans understood something that Thoric did not. Superior strength means nothing if you cannot use it. The humans did not try to match the Krellians in direct combat. They simply made direct combat impossible. The footage continued. Over the next day, the humans moved through the moon's terrain with the same careful, measured approach. But now other teams knew they were dangerous. The easy mockery was gone. When a Thoraxian scout spotted the human team from the air, they reported it immediately and called for reinforcements rather than attacking alone. 3 teams formed a temporary alliance specifically to eliminate the humans. A joint force of 24 elite warriors from 3 different species began tracking the human team's movements. "They are just 8, the alliance leader declared on the command channel. "We are 24. Even with tricks, they cannot win." On screen, Sergeant Chen was studying her paper map again when a warning came from one of her team members. Multiple contacts approaching from the south, east, and west. At least 20 hostiles. Chen looked at the map, then at her team. "We cannot fight that many. We run." The human team broke into a sprint, moving north through increasingly rocky terrain. The footage from the pursuing teams showed them giving chase, confident that their superior speed and numbers would tell. What the pursuers did not notice was that the humans were not running in panic. They were running toward something. General Vrax paused the footage. "This is where it gets interesting." The footage resumed. 24 elite warriors from 3 species chased 8 humans through rocky terrain toward the moon's northern mountain range. From the satellite view, it looked like a standard pursuit, the hunters closing in on fleeing prey, but General Vrax's voice held a strange tone as he narrated. "Watch where they are running. Look at the terrain." Zig studied the screen more carefully. The humans were heading directly toward a narrow canyon between two steep cliffs. It looked like a dead end. Once inside that canyon, they would be trapped. "They made a mistake," Korth said, his skin flashing relieved greens. "They ran the wrong direction." Tamora said nothing. Her eyes were fixed on Sergeant Chen's helmet camera footage. Even while running, Chen kept glancing down at her paper map. This was not panic. This was navigation. The Alliance force reached the canyon entrance. Their leader, a Thoraxian named Kextar, spread his wings in triumph. "We have them. The canyon is a dead end. Move in and finish this." The Alliance forces entered the canyon in a tight formation. The walls rose high on either side, made of the moon's native volcanic rock. Rough terrain, but nothing that would stop trained warriors. They advanced quickly, weapons ready, expecting to find the humans cornered at the far end. What they found instead was an empty canyon. Kextar halted his forces. "Spread out. Search every crevice. They must be hiding." That was when the first rock slide started. It began at the canyon entrance right behind the Alliance forces. Massive boulders that had been carefully positioned at the top of the cliffs came tumbling down, not all at once, but in a calculated sequence that sealed the entrance completely within seconds. "Ambush," someone shouted. The second rock slide came from ahead, blocking the far end of the canyon. The Alliance forces were now trapped in a stone box with high walls and no easy exits. Then the humans appeared. They were not on the canyon floor. They were on the cliffs above, positioned at intervals along both sides. During those 18 hours of careful movement at the beginning of the games, the humans had not just been mapping terrain. They had been preparing kill zones. They had identified this canyon as the perfect trap, and they had spent hours climbing up, moving boulders into position, creating the conditions for exactly this scenario. Now 8 humans looked down at 24 trapped warriors. Sergeant Chen's voice echoed through the canyon, amplified by the stone walls. "You have 2 choices. Surrender and leave the games peacefully, or we drop the rest of the rocks. Your armor will protect you from stun rounds. It will not protect you from several tons of stone." In Theater 7, cadets sat frozen in their seats. This was not how war games were supposed to go. This was not combat. This was something else entirely. Kextar spread his wings and tried to take flight, to escape the trap by rising out of the canyon. He made it perhaps 10 meters before stun rounds from 3 different angles hit him simultaneously. The coordination was perfect. He fell back to the canyon floor, his wings twitching but unable to function. "I said surrender." Chen's voice came again. That was not a suggestion. One of the Vexani in the trapped force stepped forward. Being telepathic, her species valued communication over violence. "We are 24 warriors. You are 8. Even trapped, we can fight our way out." "You could try," Chen agreed. "But let me explain your situation. You entered this canyon because you thought you were chasing prey. You were wrong. You were following a trail we left specifically to bring you here. Every step you took was one we wanted you to take. Every decision you made was one we predicted. So ask yourself, if we planned this trap so carefully, what else have we planned? What else have we predicted?" Silence filled the canyon. Chen continued, her voice calm and matter-of-fact. "If you fight, some of you might escape. But how many will fall before you do? And even if you win here, what then? We have been mapping this entire moon for 2 days. We know every trail, every water source, every defensible position. You think this is the only trap we have prepared? How many more canyons will you walk into? How many more surprises will you face?" She paused, letting that sink in. "Or you can surrender. Walk away. 13 teams are still active. Go hunt them. They did not prepare like we did. They will be easier targets." The Vexani looked at her fellow trapped warriors. A wordless communication seemed to pass between them. Finally, she looked up at the humans on the cliffs and spoke. "If we surrender, you will allow us to leave safely?" "Yes," Chen said simply. "Why?" "We are your enemies in this competition." Chen's response was quiet but clear. "Because we do not need to fight you. We just needed to prove we could." One by one, the trapped warriors set down their weapons. The Alliance force surrendered. The humans kept their word. They used ropes they had prepared earlier to help the warriors climb out of the canyon. Every member of the Alliance walked away alive and unharmed, but eliminated from the games. The scoreboard updated. Human team. 8 members active. 120 points for eliminating 3 teams. Current rank, first place overall. In Theater 7, Zix felt his world tilting. Everything he had learned about warfare, about honor, about strength, was being challenged by what he saw on the screen. The humans had not won through superior power. They had won through superior thinking. "This is impossible," he whispered. "War does not work this way." Tamora turned her large eyes toward him. "For us, perhaps not. But for humans, I think we are beginning to see how war works for them." The footage continued. The remaining 9 teams now knew the humans were extremely dangerous. No one would underestimate them again. The next phase of the war games became something like a chess match, with teams trying to predict and counter each other's movements. But the humans had an advantage no one else possessed. They had spent their preparation time not just planning for what they would do, but planning for what everyone else would do. Sergeant Chen's paper map was covered in marks and notes, predictions, and contingencies. General Vrax paused the recording again. "This is the end of day 2. At this point, the remaining teams held an emergency conference. They agreed that the humans had to be eliminated immediately, or the games would be decided by who could avoid them longest. 4 teams formed a coalition, 32 warriors, including some of the best combatants in the academy. The screen showed a night council among the 4 teams. A Krellian commander named Daxthor stood before the group. "We cannot let them set more traps. We cannot fight on ground they choose. We must force them into open combat where numbers matter." A Melnkar warrior, decorated with honor scars, nodded agreement. "The humans are clever, but they are still physically weak. In a direct fight, we crush them." They devised a strategy. The 4 teams would sweep across the moon in a coordinated line, giving the humans nowhere to run. They would have superior numbers, superior firepower, and superior physical abilities. This time, there would be no tricks. The hunt began at dawn on day 3. 32 warriors moved in a coordinated formation, maintaining communication, covering every possible escape route. Satellite footage showed them advancing steadily toward the humans' last known position. The humans, of course, knew they were coming. Sergeant Chen gathered her team in a small clearing. Her helmet camera caught their faces. They looked tired. 2 days of constant movement and stress had taken a toll, but they were alert and focused. "They are coming in force," Chen said. 32 against our 8. We cannot trap that many. We cannot outfight them, so we need to change the rules of the game. One of her team members, a young man with exhaustion clear in his eyes, spoke up. "How do we change the rules? They wrote them." Chen smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "They wrote the rules for the game they wanted to play. We are going to play a different game." She pointed to 3 members of her team. "You 3 are going to create a distraction. You will engage the enemy force directly, draw their attention, and hold them as long as possible." The 3 humans looked at each other. They understood what she was asking. In Theater 7, cadets leaned forward, trying to comprehend what they were hearing. "Sergeant," one of the 3 said quietly, "if we engage 32 warriors directly, we will lose." "Yes," Chen agreed. "You will lose. They will eliminate you from the games. But you will buy the rest of us time to reach the central fortress. 5 humans can take and hold a fortress. 8 cannot, if we are all eliminated here." The 3 humans were silent for a moment. Then, one by one, they nodded. "How long do you need?" one of them asked. 2 hours, Chen said. "Can you give me 2 hours?" "We will give you 3. No argument, no debate, no hesitation." 3 humans had just been asked to sacrifice their chance at victory, to face impossible odds, to essentially volunteer for defeat. And they agreed instantly. In Theater 7, the room was so quiet that Zix could hear his own breathing. Around him, cadets from species that valued honor, courage, and sacrifice were watching something that defied all their categories. Tamora's voice was barely a whisper. "They chose to lose, deliberately. Why would warriors choose to lose?" General Vrax answered from the front of the theater. "Because they were not trying to win as individuals. They were trying to win as a team. And sometimes winning as a team means some members must sacrifice." The footage showed the plan in action. 3 humans moved to intercept the advancing coalition force. They chose their position carefully, a rocky area with good cover but no escape routes. When the 32 warriors arrived, the 3 humans opened fire. The coalition force responded immediately. 32 warriors descended on 3 humans like a hammer on an anvil. But the 3 humans had prepared well. They had created barriers from rocks. They had positioned themselves to create crossfire zones. And they fought with an intensity that surprised everyone watching. The battle lasted not 2 hours, not 3 hours, but nearly 4 hours. The 3 humans used every trick, every advantage of terrain, every round of ammunition they possessed. They fell back from position to position, making the coalition pay for every meter of ground. One by one they fell. But not easily, not quickly. When the last of the 3 was finally eliminated, the coalition force had taken significant casualties. 14 of the 32 warriors had been eliminated. The remaining 18 were exhausted, low on ammunition, and demoralized by how hard the fight had been. The coalition commander, Daxthor, stood over the position where the last human had fallen. His voice was captured by his helmet camera. 3 humans. 3. And they took down 14 of us. In Theater 7, cadets from multiple species sat in stunned silence. 14 elite warriors eliminated by 3 humans who knew they were going to lose but fought anyway. But the recording was not finished. While the 3 humans had been sacrificing themselves, the other 5 had been moving. Sergeant Chen led them on a forced march toward the central fortress. The footage showed them running, climbing, pushing, their bodies beyond what should have been possible for their species. They reached the fortress with 1 hour left in the games. 4 other teams still remained in competition, scattered across the moon. But none of them were at the fortress. The 5 humans entered the fortress and immediately began preparing defenses. They barricaded entrances, they positioned weapons, they set up their last remaining traps, and then they waited. General Vrax's voice was quiet as he narrated the final phase. What you are about to see next changed galactic military doctrine. It forced us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about warfare, about sacrifice, and about what happens when a species refuses to accept defeat. The screen showed 4 different teams receiving the same information. The humans had taken the fortress. With only 1 hour remaining, if they could hold it, they would win despite having only 5 members left. All 4 teams immediately began moving toward the fortress. Including the depleted coalition force, this meant 18 warriors converging on 5 humans. The final battle was about to begin. The central fortress was not a complicated structure. It was a prefabricated military building, 3 stories tall with reinforced walls and a command center on the top floor. Standard war games protocol. Whoever held it when time expired would earn 500 points, enough to guarantee victory. 5 humans now occupied that fortress. 18 alien warriors from 4 different teams approached from all directions. The satellite footage showed the aliens converging. They moved carefully now, having learned from previous encounters with the humans. No one was underestimating anyone anymore. Sergeant Chen stood at the top of the fortress, looking out over the approaches through a set of observation windows. Her 4 remaining team members were positioned at key points throughout the building. All of them were exhausted. Their ammunition was nearly depleted. They had no supplies for an extended siege. Chen activated the fortress's external communication system. Her voice broadcast to all teams within range. This is Sergeant Sarah Chen of the human team. I know you are approaching. I know you intend to take this fortress. I need you to stop and listen to what I have to say. On screen, the alien teams paused. It was unusual for anyone to broadcast openly like this. Usually, the final battles were conducted in silence, each team trying to maintain surprise. We have rigged this fortress with explosives, Chen said. In Theater 7, several cadets gasped. Explosives were against the rules. Using them would result in immediate disqualification and potential criminal charges. But Chen continued. Before you report us for rules violations, you should understand something. We did not bring explosives to this moon. We made them here, using materials that occur naturally on this moon, combined with components from standard equipment that we modified. Technically, this does not violate the rules against unauthorized equipment, though I imagine it violates the spirit of those rules. Daxthor, the Krellian coalition commander, responded over the open channel. You are bluffing. If you detonate explosives inside the fortress, you will eliminate yourselves. Yes, Chen agreed simply. We will. Silence fell over the communications channel. Let me be clear, Chen said. You can advance on this fortress. You can probably take it from us. You have superior numbers and we are nearly out of ammunition. In a straight fight, you will win. But before you take this fortress, we will detonate the explosives. Everyone inside will be eliminated, including us. The fortress will be damaged badly enough that the War Games officials will have to halt the competition for safety reasons. No one will win. Zik stared at the screen, his four hands gripping his seat so tightly that the armrests were starting to crack. She is threatening mutual destruction. Over a training exercise, Tamora's voice was quiet. No, she is making sure they understand the cost of victory. On screen, a Thoraxian team leader named Vexil spoke up. You would eliminate your own team just to prevent us from winning? That is insane, is it? Chen replied. We are already losing. 4 of our 8 team members have been eliminated. Even if we hold this fortress until time expires, we will not have the highest total score. We cannot win in the traditional sense. So why not change what winning means? She paused, letting that sink in. We came to these war games knowing we were the weakest species here, knowing that by every physical measure we would lose. And we have lost in many ways. But we have also shown you something important. We have shown you that physical weakness does not mean defeat if you are willing to pay any price, accept any cost, to achieve your objective. The fortress's external cameras showed the alien teams. They had all stopped advancing. Warriors who minutes ago had been ready to storm the building now stood frozen, uncertain. Chen's voice continued, calm and measured. So here is what I propose. You acknowledge that we won this engagement. You withdraw, and we all leave this fortress intact so the next class of cadets can use it. Or you advance, we destroy everything, and the war games end with no winner at all. That is not victory, Daxthor said. That is just mutual elimination. You are correct, Chen agreed. It is not victory in any traditional sense. But I will tell you what it is. It is a message that says when you fight humans, there is no such thing as an easy win. Every victory against us will cost you something. Every battle will leave scars. And sometimes we will make sure that defeating us is so expensive that you will wish you had never fought us in the first place. The communications channel fell silent. The alien teams looked at each other through their helmet cameras. Calculations were being made. Was this a bluff? Could 5 humans really have built explosives from scratch? And even if it was a bluff, what did it mean that they were willing to make such a threat? General Vrax paused the recording. In Theater 7, 700 cadets sat in absolute silence. The old general stood and walked to the center of the room, his scarred face illuminated by the frozen image on the screen. What you are witnessing, Vrax said, is a negotiation. But it is not a normal negotiation. In most military situations, both sides want to survive. Both sides want to win, but survival is the baseline. What Sergeant Chen did was remove that baseline. She made survival optional. And in doing so, she changed the entire calculation of combat. He gestured at the screen. For 2 hours, those 18 warriors stood outside the fortress trying to decide what to do. They had teams back at their bases analyzing the fortress, trying to determine if the explosive threat was real. Intelligence officers were reviewing footage of the humans' movements, looking for evidence of bomb-making materials. Psychologists were studying Sergeant Chen's voice patterns, trying to detect deception. Vrax's 4 eyes scanned the cadets. Would you like to know what they concluded? No one answered, but everyone wanted to know. They concluded that it did not matter if the threat was real. What mattered was that Sergeant Chen believed it was real. What mattered was that she was willing to follow through. And that willingness changed everything. The recording resumed. 1 hour remained in the war games, then 45 minutes. Then 30. The alien team still had not advanced. Finally, Daxthor's voice came over the communication channel. Sergeant Chen, I am Commander Daxthor of the Krellian forces. I want to understand something. Why does this matter so much to you? This is a training exercise, a competition. Why are you willing to destroy your own team over it? Chen's response came after a long pause. Because this is not just about winning a game, Commander. This is about making sure you understand who humans are. You think we are weak. You think we are inferior, and by your standards you are correct. We cannot match your strength. We cannot match your speed. We cannot match your natural advantages. Her voice became quieter but more intense. But we can match your will. We can exceed your commitment, and we can be so unpleasant to fight that you will think twice before starting a war with us. Not because we will definitely win, but because we will make sure you lose more than you can afford to lose. That is worth sacrificing a training exercise. That is worth proving here and now. Another long silence followed. Then Vexel, the Thoraxian team leader, spoke. If we acknowledge your victory and withdraw, you will not detonate the explosives? Correct, Chen said. This fortress stands. You live to fight another day, and you go back to your species with a story about the humans you fought. And what story will that be? Vexel asked. That humans are not to be underestimated, that we are not easy prey, that fighting us costs more than you might expect. Tell them that story, and I consider it a victory worth more than any score in a training game. The team leaders conferred among themselves on private channels. The satellite footage showed them gathering in small groups, discussing, debating. This was unprecedented. The war games had never ended like this. With 15 minutes remaining, Daxthor made the decision. Human team, this is Commander Daxthor. On behalf of the coalition forces present, we acknowledge your tactical victory in this engagement. We are withdrawing from the fortress. One by one, the other team leaders echoed the acknowledgement. 18 warriors, who could have stormed the fortress and probably won despite any traps or explosives, instead turned and walked away. Sergeant Chen watched them go from the fortress windows. When the last alien was out of sight, she finally allowed herself to sit down. Her hands were shaking. Her voice, when she spoke to her team on their private channel, was very different from the calm, measured tone she had used for the negotiations. Did we really rig the fortress with explosives? One of her team members asked. Chen pulled out a small device from her pack. It looked like it might be a detonator. I honestly have no idea if this would work. I built it from components I found, and damaged equipment and some chemicals from the medkits. If I press this button, we might all die, or nothing might happen, or maybe just a small fire would start. The team member stared at her. You bluffed. The entire thing was a bluff. No, Chen corrected. I was willing to find out if it worked. That is not the same as bluffing. A bluff is when you are not willing to follow through. I was absolutely willing to press this button and see what happened. The difference is subtle, but important. In Theater 7, Korth's skin flashed colors that might have been confusion or might have been awe. She did not know if the explosives were real, but she was willing to use them anyway. That is not courage. That is something else. That is human, General Vrax said from the front of the room. That is what we learned from these war games. Humans do not just fight to win. They fight to make losing so terrible for their enemies that the enemy reconsiders fighting at all. The recording showed the final minutes of the war games. Sergeant Chen's team held the fortress until time expired. Official scores were calculated. Due to the eliminations, the humans did not technically score the highest points. But by forcing acknowledgement of victory from their opponents, they had achieved something no score could reflect. The War Games officials spent 3 days arguing about the results. Eventually, they ruled that while the human team had not technically won, they had also not technically violated any rules. The explosive device Chen built was classified as improvised equipment made from authorized materials, which existed in a gray area of the regulations. But that was not the important part. What happened next, General Vrax said, freezing the recording on an image of Sergeant Chen's face, is what led to the ban. He walked closer to the cadets. Within 1 week of this recording being reviewed, by military leadership, 17 species filed formal complaints with the Galactic Council. Not about rule violations, not about human aggression. Their complaints were about something much simpler and much more terrifying. Vrax's scarred face was grim. They complained that humans had fundamentally changed how warfare would work in this galaxy. Before these war games, military conflict followed understood patterns. Superior technology, superior numbers, superior strength, these determined outcomes. But humans introduced a new variable: willingness to pay any cost. He gestured at the screen. Mutually assured destruction was a human concept from their own planet's history. They built weapons capable of destroying their entire world, not to use them, but to make sure no one else would use theirs. They created a doctrine based on the idea that if they were going to lose, they would make sure everyone lost. Tamora spoke up from her seat, her voice uncertain. That is insane. Why would anyone build weapons meant to destroy themselves? Because it worked, Vrax replied simply. For almost a century on their planet, the threat of mutual destruction prevented the largest nations from going to war with each other. Yes, it was insane. Yes, it was dangerous. But it was also effective. And that effectiveness is what terrified the 17 species who filed complaints. He returned to the podium. The complaints argued that if humans were integrated into galactic military structures, they would bring this philosophy with them. They would train other species to think this way. They would normalize the idea of victory through threatened mutual annihilation. And eventually, that philosophy would spread until every species in the galaxy was holding a metaphorical bomb, daring others to make them use it. Zix found his voice. So the ban was not because humans were weak. It was because they were too dangerous to learn from. Precisely, Vrax said. The Galactic Military Council decided that humans should be isolated from war games, from joint training exercises, from anything that would let their tactical philosophy spread to other species. For 15 years we have kept them separate. He paused, his 4 eyes scanning the silent theater. Until yesterday, Vrax continued, when Admiral Sarah Chen formally requested that the ban be lifted. Theater 7 erupted in noise. 700 cadets all tried to speak at once, their voices mixing into incomprehensible chaos. Zix was on his feet. Tamora's hover seat spun in agitated circles. Korth's skin flashed through every color in rapid succession. Even the usually disciplined Melnkar cadets showed visible signs of distress. General Vrax raised one hand, and gradually the noise subsided. But the tension in the room remained thick enough to feel physical. Admiral Sarah Chen, Vrax repeated, letting the title sink in. The sergeant you just watched on that recording spent 15 years isolated from the Galactic Federation. She was not imprisoned. She was not punished. She simply went home to Earth and continued her military career there. And yesterday, as the newly appointed commander of Earth's First Fleet, she sent a formal request to the Galactic Council requesting humanity's readmission to full military participation. Why now? A Thoraxian cadet called out. Why after 15 years? Vrax touched a control, and new images appeared on the screen. Ship designs, fleet formations, tactical doctrine documents, all bearing Earth symbols. Because, Vrax said quietly, humanity has not been idle. The first image showed a warship unlike anything in standard galactic design. It was smaller than most species' capital ships, but there was something about its configuration that suggested efficiency over size. This is the ECS Victory, Vrax explained, the flagship of Earth's First Fleet. By galactic standards, it is not impressive. Moderate shielding, standard weapons, nothing that would concern our military analysts from a pure technology standpoint. He paused significantly. But the Victory is not designed to fight like our ships fight. Look at the secondary systems. The image zoomed in on various ship components, 70% redundancy on all critical systems, multiple backup power sources, self-repair capabilities built into every section. This ship is designed not to avoid damage but to continue fighting after taking damage that would cripple any other vessel. Another image appeared, showing fleet formations. Earth's First Fleet contains 247 ships. Again, not impressive by numbers. The Krellian Empire alone has 3 times that many, but look at how they are configured to operate. The formation diagram showed ships in a complex interlocking pattern. Zix studied it, trying to understand the tactical purpose. Then it hit him. They are protecting each other, he said aloud. Every ship is positioned to cover at least 2 others. If you attack one, 3 more can immediately respond. But that means they cannot operate independently. They are locked into mutual support. Correct, Vrax confirmed. Human military doctrine for space combat assumes that every engagement is a fight to the death. They do not plan for retreat. They do not design ships that can operate alone. Everything is built around the concept of total commitment to every battle. Tamora's voice was troubled. That is inefficient. If you cannot retreat, you will take more casualties. In the short term, yes, Vrax agreed. But consider the psychological effect. If you know that engaging a human fleet means fighting until one side is completely destroyed, would you start that fight casually? Would you risk your ships for minor objectives? The room fell silent as cadets absorbed this implication. More images appeared on the screen. Training facilities, recruitment numbers, manufacturing capacity, all from Earth, all built over the past 15 years. Earth's current military population is 4.3 billion, Vrax stated. That is 10 times higher per capita than any other species in the Federation. 1 out of every 4 humans is either in active military service or reserves. They have created a society structured around the assumption that they might need to fight at any moment. That is not sustainable, a Melnkar cadet protested. You cannot maintain that level of militarization without destroying your economy and culture. You would think so, Vrax said. But humans have done something unusual. They have integrated military service into their cultural identity. For them, being ready to fight is not a burden. It is a point of pride. They volunteer in massive numbers because they see it as their responsibility to their species. He brought up more data. In the 15 years since the ban, Earth has built a military infrastructure that rivals species who have been part of the Federation for centuries. They did this without our technology, without our resources, using only what they could develop themselves, and now they want back in. Korth's skin showed uncertain yellows. What do they gain by rejoining? They have built their own military. Why do they need the Federation? It was Tamora who answered, her telepathic abilities giving her insight into motivations. Because being separate makes them a target. If they remain isolated, any species could declare them an enemy and attack without breaking Federation law. But if they are members, attacking them means attacking the Federation itself. Precisely, Vrax confirmed. Admiral Chen's request is not from weakness. It is from a position of strength. She is essentially telling us that humanity is now powerful enough that we cannot afford to keep them isolated. Either we accept them as allies or we risk making them enemies. The screen changed again, showing a transmission timestamp from less than 24 hours ago. There is one more thing you need to know. This morning, long-range sensors detected unusual activity on the rim of Federation space. The Zathek swarm has awakened. Absolute silence fell over Theater 7. The Zathek swarm were a nightmare from galactic history, a species that had gone dormant 300 years ago after nearly destroying half the Federation. They were not intelligent in the traditional sense, but they were numerous beyond counting and completely hostile to all other life. The swarm has not been seen in 3 centuries. Vrax continued. We had hoped they were extinct. We were wrong. Current estimates suggest approximately 50,000 Zathek vessels are active and moving toward the core worlds. They will reach Federation space in approximately 3 months. He let that information settle before continuing. 6 hours ago, Admiral Chen sent a second transmission to the Galactic Council. Earth's first fleet is ready to assist in defense against the swarm. But she needs our answer first. Are humans part of the Federation or not? Zix felt his minds racing through the implications. The timing was too perfect. Did humanity know about the swarm? Is that why they chose now to request readmission? We do not know, Vrax admitted. Human sensor technology is apparently more advanced than we realized. It is possible they detected the swarm before we did, or it might be coincidence. Either way, the Council now faces a decision. Accept humanity's help and lift the ban, or face the swarm with conventional forces alone. A Vexani cadet spoke up, her voice thoughtful. You are asking us what we think. Why, we are just cadets. The Council will decide regardless of our opinions. Vrax's scarred face showed something that might have been respect. Because you are the future military leaders of your species. In 10 years, you will be the ones commanding ships, leading ground forces, making strategic decisions. The Council needs to know whether the next generation can work alongside humans, whether you can learn from their methods without losing yourselves in their philosophy. He gestured at all of them. So I ask you now, after watching that recording, after understanding what human military doctrine means, would you be willing to fight alongside humans? Would you be willing to learn their tactics? Or do you think the ban should remain? For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of the question pressed down on all of them. This was not theoretical anymore. This was real. Finally, Zik stood. His 4 hands gripped the seat in front of him as he gathered his thoughts. I came into this theater yesterday thinking humans were weak. Thinking the ban was unnecessary. I was wrong on both counts. He looked around at his fellow cadets. Humans are not weak. They are terrifying in a way I never understood before. They do not just fight. They change what fighting means. And yes, that is dangerous. Yes, learning from them might change how we think about warfare. He paused, then continued more firmly. But the swarm does not care about our traditions. The swarm does not follow rules of engagement. If we face them with only our conventional tactics, we will lose. But if we have humans fighting beside us, humans who know how to win when they should lose, then maybe we have a chance. Zik sat down. For a moment, no one else moved. Then Tamora rose from her hover seat. I agree. My species values logic and reason. The logical choice is to accept humanity's offer. The reasonable choice is to learn from those who think differently than we do. I vote to lift the ban. One by one, other cadets stood. Korth, his skin showing determined reds and oranges. A Melnkar warrior with honor scars. A young Thoraxian who had been laughing just yesterday. They stood, and by standing, they voted. Within 5 minutes, every cadet in Theater 7 was on their feet. 700 future military leaders, all agreeing that humanity should be readmitted to the Federation. General Vrax watched them stand. His scarred face showed no emotion, but his voice carried something that might have been satisfaction. The Council will hear your recommendation. Whether they follow it is another matter. He dismissed the assembly but asked Zix, Tamora, and several other cadets to remain. When the theater had cleared, Vrax brought up one final image on the screen. It was a live feed from the Federation Council chambers. The vote is happening now, Vrax said quietly. The cadets watched as representatives from 47 species debated humanity's readmission. The arguments went back and forth. Some species feared human tactics would spread and destabilize galactic military doctrine. Others argued that desperate times required desperate measures. Still others pointed out that keeping humans isolated had not stopped them from building a powerful military, so perhaps it was better to have them inside the Federation where they could be monitored. The debate lasted 3 hours. Finally, the vote was called. 29 species voted in favor of lifting the ban. 15 voted against. 3 abstained. Humanity was readmitted to the Galactic Federation with full military participation rights. The screen showed Admiral Sarah Chen receiving the news. She was older than the sergeant from the recording, with lines around her eyes and gray showing in her hair. But her expression was the same measured calm that had characterized her 15 years ago. The Federation has made its decision, she said in her official response. Earth's first fleet will deploy to assist with swarm defense within the week. We look forward to fighting alongside our galactic allies once again. The transmission ended. General Vrax turned to the remaining cadets. You will have 3 days to prepare. Then you will begin integrated training with human instructors. Admiral Chen is sending some of her best tactical officers to the academy. You will learn human combat philosophy alongside your traditional training. Zix felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. Who will be teaching us? Vrax pulled up personnel files. Among others, Commander Rodriguez and Commander Jackson. They were part of Sergeant Chen's original War Games team. The 3 who sacrificed themselves to buy time survived and went on to distinguished careers. They are particularly skilled at teaching the concept of tactical sacrifice. Tamora studied the files. What do you think will happen? When we actually face the swarm? Vrax was quiet for a long moment. I think, he said finally, that the swarm is about to discover what 17 species learned 15 years ago. That fighting humans is expensive in ways that have nothing to do with technology or numbers. The swarm thinks in terms of consumption and expansion. Humans think in terms of making their enemies regret ever starting the fight. 3 months later, the swarm reached Federation space. The first engagement took place at the Krillax system, a lightly defended mining colony. The Zathek attacked with overwhelming numbers, as they always did. 10,000 swarm vessels descended on a defense force of barely 200 ships. The defense force included 30 human vessels and a mixed complement of Federation ships commanded by officers who had completed integrated training. The battle lasted 14 hours. The swarm expected to overwhelm the defenders through pure numbers. Instead, they encountered a defense that simply refused to break. Human ships took devastating damage but continued fighting with backup systems. Federation vessels trained in human tactics coordinated in ways the swarm could not predict. When swarm ships destroyed one defender, two others immediately filled the gap. The swarm lost 7,000 vessels in that engagement. The defenders lost 40% of their ships, including 15 human vessels. But the mining colony survived, and the swarm's advance was halted for the first time in 3 centuries. The battle became known as the Stand at Krillax. It was studied in every military academy across the Federation. Not because of brilliant tactics or superior technology, but because it demonstrated a simple truth. Sometimes refusing to lose is more powerful than any weapon. 1 year after the ban was lifted, Zix graduated from the Galactic Military Academy with honors. His first assignment was as a tactical officer aboard a joint human-Krellian cruiser. His immediate supervisor was Commander Rodriguez, who still remembered being banned from the war games all those years ago. On his first day, Rodriguez gave him a piece of advice. "The most important thing I can teach you is this. You are stronger than I will ever be. You are faster. You have 4 arms to my 2. In almost any measurable way, you are superior." She paused, smiling slightly. "But I know something you are still learning. Superior strength means nothing if you are not willing to use every bit of it. Superior technology means nothing if you are not willing to sacrifice it when necessary. The question is never whether you can win. The question is whether you are willing to pay the cost of winning." Zix thought back to the recording he had watched in Theater 7, to Sergeant Chen standing in that fortress, holding a device that might not even work, willing to press the button anyway, to the 3 humans who sacrificed themselves to buy time, to an entire species that had built their military philosophy around the idea that losing was acceptable only if everyone lost together. "I understand," he said. "No," Rodriguez replied. "Not yet. But you will. And when you do, you will be a better officer for it." The war games continued at the Galactic Military Academy, but with new rules. Every team now had to include at least 1 human advisor, not to lead but to teach, to demonstrate that there was more than one way to think about warfare. And across the galaxy, military doctrine slowly began to change. Not completely, not quickly, but the idea spread like ripples from a stone dropped in still water. The idea that willingness mattered as much as capability. That determination could defeat technology. That sometimes the most powerful weapon was the simple refusal to accept defeat. The Zathic swarm fought on for 3 more years before finally retreating back to dormancy. They had faced Federation forces that would not break, would not retreat, and would not accept losing under any circumstances. The swarm, driven by ancient programming to consume and expand, could not understand an enemy that was willing to destroy itself just to stop them. In the end, it was not superior firepower that defeated the swarm. It was superior will. Admiral Sarah Chen retired 5 years after the ban was lifted. Her final address to the Academy was brief. "You asked me once why humans fight the way we do," she said. "Why we are willing to pay costs that seem unreasonable. The answer is simple. We are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. We are not the smartest. But we are the most stubborn. And sometimes, in a galaxy full of species that know when to quit, the most dangerous thing you can be is the one who does not." She looked out at the assembled cadets, human and alien alike. "You do not need to fight like humans. You need to fight like yourself. But remember what we taught you. Remember that victory is not just about winning. It is about making sure your enemy understands that fighting you is not worth the cost." Years later, when Zix told his students about the first time he watched that recording, they always asked the same question. Had he been right to vote for lifting the ban? His answer never changed. "I do not know if it was right, but I know it was necessary." The galaxy needed to learn what humans had always known, that the will to fight matters more than the ability to fight. And sometimes the strongest weapon is not the one that can destroy your enemy, but the one that makes your enemy choose not to fight at all. The war games continued. Teams won and lost. Cadets graduated and joined the military. Ships patrolled the borders of Federation space, but everything was different now. Because everyone had learned the lesson that 8 humans had taught 15 years ago in a training exercise that became legend. In war, there are no easy victories, only expensive ones, and the species willing to pay the highest cost is the one that decides the outcome. The ban had been lifted not because humans had changed, but because the galaxy finally understood what they had always been. Dangerous not despite their weakness, but because of it. because weakness had taught them that survival meant being willing to pay any price, accept any cost, and never ever accept defeat. And now every species in the Federation carried that lesson forward. The human way of war had become, in some small part, everyone's way of war. And the galaxy was safer for it.